Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to another Stories Inc. LinkedIn learning session. My name is Bernadette Van Giesen and I'm your host. Thank you everyone for joining here today. If it's your first time, welcome. If it's not your first time, welcome back. We like to host these bite-sized learning sessions every other Thursday here on LinkedIn. And this week we are really excited about our topic. We're talking about how to lead employer brand as a team of one. And there was really no one else I could think of to speak to this topic than my good industry friend, Jen Beyer. Welcome, Jen.
Yes.
I'm so glad that
Thank
you're here.
you. Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Jen is the employer brand advisor at Fannie Mae. And I know this is not the first place that you've been an employer brand team of one, but I'll kind of give you the floor here to kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, who you are, what you do at Fannie Mae, and maybe a little bit about your career journey thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, I am Fannie Mae's one and only employer brand advisor. I sit in talent acquisition, but I have a ton of stakeholders in my role. I oversee our employer brand strategy, our EVP, our employer value proposition. I'm responsible for awareness for our careers and life at Fannie Mae, but also candidate and employee engagement. This really consists of me working on paid campaigns with our marketing partners, content creation, social media, our careers website, all the really great things and fun things that are part of employer branding. And you know I, out Beyond my role here at Fannie Mae, I've run and managed employer branding at all different types of companies in various industries, all the way from mid-sized tech company to a large defense firm and a best practice research firm. So I've really been able to experience a lot of different types of employer branding and needs, which has been really exciting for my career. I initially, I think a lot of people wonder how you get into employer branding. It's not anything that I studied in school or actually even for the most part existed when I was in school. I was an in-house recruiter and turned campus recruiting leader. And a lot of my projects, of course, really aligned to things that you would typically either work on or be, aware of in employer branding. And I decided to go back to school to get my master's in strategic communication, kind of marry the two areas of my interest, recruiting and communications. And that really led me to join our internal comms team at the time and do employee engagement, but also employer branding for the organization I was a part of. So that's kind of how I came into employer branding. And ever since have been in this space, mainly as a team of one.
Yeah, and for many reasons, I'm so glad that you're here to speak on this topic. But I think sometimes people think of maybe a team of one being for like smaller organizations or just for organizations like very first employer brand person. But you've really been at like large companies, global companies, smaller companies, like across different industries. And so I think you have a really great perspective on what it takes to be successful and have been in a lot of different environments to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there is something to be said about, your role in employer branding, depending on the size of the company, how mature they are in their employer brand. If they really value the employer brand, or they have the resources for it, it really does kind of change your experience and what you really focus on as an employer brander.
Yes, and I think we're going to touch on a lot of those topics today.
Yeah.
I also should say for anyone out there listening live, we are doing this conversation live, and so the comments are open. So if you have any questions for Jen or questions for me, I'm happy to jump in. But we will try to get to stuff throughout the session, and then maybe save some for the end. So feel free to ask questions as we go along.
Absolutely.
So first, kind of before we dive into a lot of the nitty gritty here. Can you just tell us a little bit about what is appealing to you about being a team of one? What are some of the positives that you like about it? What are the challenges it presents just kind of at a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. I personally love being a team of one because you do have obviously a lot of independence in your work, making the decisions. really determining how you tackle projects, and what ultimately aspects of employer branding you want to be a part of, and that can really build your skills from doing the tactical day-to-day work all the way to strategy, which is again really great for your career and your development. I think the biggest challenge is just really getting your hands around the full scope of all the elements of employer branding. You've got limited person power. You're trying to figure out how to get it all still done. Typically, trying to really focus on the work that matters most or is most impactful. And that might mean that you might not get all the experiences or certain work to be a part of. Sometimes you have to be a little more scrappy to get it done, or finding others to help you with your work and getting that buy-in to help others partner with you. And sometimes it's just really nice to have somebody to be able to bounce ideas off of, and you share the pains and the successes. So there's definitely your benefits and downfalls, if you will, for being an employer of one.
Yeah, no, I feel a lot of that. I'm a marketing team of one, so like similar kind of challenges. And I think the challenge of being like having to be a jack of all trades and then master of none is
Yes,
the end of that phrase. But
absolutely.
that it's like if you're drawn to a more like specialist kind of mentality, maybe being a team of one isn't quite for you. But if you like being able to touch a lot of things and grow your skills in a lot of different areas, there's a lot of great opportunities.
I agree. I do think there are a lot of employer branders who might be really good at content. Some have expertise in writing. Others are great with like media and paid campaigns. So it does depend on sometimes your skill set if it's right fit for you.
Yeah. So I think that really leads really well into the first thing I'm hoping to talk about today, which is really, really key to being a successful team of one is having a clear definition of what your role is, what you're looking to accomplish. Employer brand can be so big, but it's like you have to focus somewhere because there's only so many hours in the week. So can you just tell us a little bit more about how you kind of structure your job, what parts of employer brand you focus on, if it's easier to compare and contrast from your different roles, whatever works for you, but just kind of like how you look at the role and then figure out what's most important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me personally, I really look at bucketing the core elements of employer branding, and that helps to bucket the work or projects that I may be focusing on. I think some of that, those buckets consist of awareness tactics and initiatives, candidate engagement and candidate experience, channel management, content development, and employee story creation. And I think the other element of that is just, for each company that I personally have worked with, they of course have their own view of what employer branding is or what they want to get done or accomplished. And so I always, obviously take that into consideration as well. When I do start a new role in employer branding, I typically do a 30-day assessment of the company's employer brand. And I think that does depend on, excuse me, how established that employer brand is, if they're just
Mhm.
starting in their journey or if it's pretty mature, but ultimately it helps me determine, what's performing well, where are there areas they need to develop or expand upon, just really making sure that it is well rounded and it's hitting some of those core elements of employer brand. But also, again, kind of taking into consideration the company's hiring needs, the goals for the year, or other business elements, and then I really try to and then have those recommendations of what we should continue to do, what should we start doing. Maybe there's some things that you need to stop. They might not be making a big impact, and I think that's the other element of or other layer of how you kind of look at your work is, where can you make the biggest impact with maybe some low effort work or tactics, where you might have some nice to haves or some things on your wish list that just either take too much time, or maybe they're just not bringing enough value, and maybe that's something that you put a little bit on your roadmap
Mhm.
for the future. So I really do try to create that quadrant for the work. And then I think lastly, kind of looking at your timeline for your work, bucketing projects or initiatives by different quarters, or across the year, and that will really help you stay focused for the time of the year, and not make you feel like you're overwhelmed. I definitely don't recommend starting everything all at once. There are probably different projects and things that you can phase in, as you get more mature or established in the position, and have a little bit more either time or capacity or people across the business that can maybe help you get through those.
Yeah, so a lot of really great information there. I have like a couple follow-up questions. I love the advice to, especially in a new role, or if you kind of are at like a pivot point of finding like high impact, low effort things that you can kind of like get those fast wins. Can you think of an example of what that has looked like at a time in one of your jobs? Like maybe when you're
Yeah,
doing that 30-day assessment and you kind of like identify like, okay, here's how I can like make a good first impression, like a
yeah.
quick you can do.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one example would be, as you're evaluating the different channels that your company might be using for employer branding, it's likely your careers website, your social channels, maybe Glassdoor, or Indeed profiles. Really kind of giving those a scan. And are there some quick updates or adjustments to content, copy, videos that you can do to help to give a consistent and consistent feel and look to your brand across your channels? That can be a pretty high impact, low effort project, and something that can make again immediate shift in how a candidate might look at you, or maybe influence their decision to apply. So I think things like that, where you're really going to make a positive candidate experience or improve your brand visually online, I think that can make a really big difference, and not take too much effort if it's already established channels.
Mm-hmm. And especially if you are kind of creating that cohesion and consistency, I think in the long run that will help you save time too. That if like we
Absolutely.
have a similar like look and feel, we are maybe sharing similar types of stories, but maybe in different formats across our different channels, things like that. That it's like if you have that consistency, it's easier to move faster in the future.
Absolutely.
One other question that I had from what you said was, I think there's a really delicate balance between what the company views employer brand as and like what their goals are, and then as a professional and like an expert in this field, like what your recommendations are and what you see. Do you have any advice or reflections on kind of like how to balance those two things, and like where it makes sense to push back a little bit, where it makes sense to kind of like lean into what you were hired for, just kind of like those that
Yeah.
delicate balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree. There is, I think everybody, or maybe your leadership have a different point of view of, what their employer brand is, what value they bring to their employees. And I kind of always go back to those core elements of the employer brand. What are your key things that you should be focusing on or have a part of your employer brand, and see ultimately if that fits into it in any way. And if it does, it's great, because then you can see that it is maybe something that you should focus on or expand upon, or maybe they've already got projects in place that you should be picking up. But if it might not be something that's as relevant, or maybe it's just focusing on the wrong thing. I think that's where I think if you talk, and I'm sure you do, talk to a lot of employer branders, that sometimes employer branding can get a little muddled with like consumer brand or a company brand, and really educating your stakeholders and those leaders on what ultimately is employer branding, what is valued, what are your candidates needs. I think a lot of times those projects are a little bit more aligned to, again, the company's needs, the
Mhm.
leaders or managers' point of views, and ultimately our customer are our prospective candidates or prospective employees, and so kind of putting their needs and their view and will help them make an informed decision on if they should apply or be a part of a organization can go a really long way when talking through what projects you should be focusing on and why they're important.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a great call. And I think kind of like what I took out of that was like finding who you can align with, especially as a team of one, that's like otherwise you'll just be really siloed if you're not kind of like partnering with someone. So maybe if your role is more internally facing, maybe you're sitting more closely with internal comms, employee engagement, like and really aligning to their goals. Or and then the next question I'm going to ask you about your current role at Fannie Mae, but it's like if you're more aligned externally facing, that it's like what are our talent goals, what are our hiring goals, and like how can I kind of align myself there, which I would imagine would kind of like just make your vision a little bit clearer of like what I need to do and what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there are some employer branders who are almost all externally facing, and they're doing a lot more recruitment marketing tactics, and looking at the prospective candidate. And then there's others that are, like you said, very aligned to internal comms and employee engagement. My role personally right now, it's actually a really great blend of both. I really follow the employee life cycle of what do they see online to what's experience as new hire, and then beyond that, just kind of ensuring that employees are still seeing the messages that they saw when they were candidates, but also continue to feel the value of what it means to work at the company, so they can be your your advocates and your ambassadors for others who may be considering the company. And then should they be leave, they always have that positive feeling about your organization. So I really do love being able to have both sides of it and get involved with that external facing view of a brand, but also see it live with employees and see them sing your song.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like we've given a good kind of overview of how you might go about figuring out what's important in your role. So can you tell us a little bit more specifically, May, like what are kind of you mentioned you're both sides of the life cycle, candidates and employees. Do you have any specific like metrics and KPIs that you're kind of measured against? Like how do you kind of ground your job?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I absolutely first and foremost try to focus my work on priorities and goals for the year, and really being able to tie my work back to those activities, and that's absolutely measured by those KPIs and those numbers, and a lot of it is maybe your typical employer brand metrics, whether it's awareness metrics like impressions, reach, views, website traffic. I also focus a lot on engagement, candidate engagement, and kind of bringing people down that hiring funnel, if you will. Making sure that we're looking at leads that we're generating for our we have a candidate relationship management system, our open and click rates for our email campaigns, and then also candidates are a really important part of measuring our success. Are we getting positive reviews from candidates and new hires? Are we bringing in applicant quality? We don't want to just uh, overwhelm our recruiters with applicant volume, but just making sure we're attracting the right talent. Company ratings, and employee engagement. We have we have a social sharing tool that we use with employees, and if they're sharing messages, and it's reaching their network, that can go a really long way with the work that we're doing. So those are some of the metrics that I really focus on, and just making sure that we're on track. And then when we're reviewing for the following year, looking to see where we can improve, or maybe we should be focusing differently.
Well, that's so impressive. As a team of one, that's like a really, really broad scale. We're at like the top of funnel awareness stuff, and then moving through candidate conversion, and then getting into that like new hire onboarding and then employee experience too. So I'm sorry, I'm jumping around our outline a little bit here,
Wow.
Jen. But my kind of like follow-up question there, like that's like just a really breadth of things that you're working on. How do you manage your time? Like, how do you kind of like keep yourself on track? Because I think that can be the hardest thing as a team of one when you're maybe, I mean, I know you're accountable to someone, but it's like you're like a little bit less accountable. You have that freedom to roam a little bit within your work. So like, how do you manage your time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is the key to getting a lot done quickly. If you're taking that time to figure out the uh, the timelines and the project management that really works for you. I mean, I think this is something that's um, I've really experienced at Fannie Mae's. There is extremely goal oriented, so we usually do have those 3 to 4 priorities for employer branding specifically that all my stakeholders are very aware of, and we partner on. And so really drawing all the projects back to those priorities is key for our success. I have a project planner, and we use Microsoft Teams to make sure I'm keeping track of my projects and the tasks aligned to those projects, and color code those to the different topics, and making sure there are deadlines against those, so I know when things are going to be coming up. Um, we actually do project timelines and bucket bodies of work by the first and second half of the year. So we know for the next 6 months, these are the things that we're trying to achieve. And then we do a little bit of a review at that 6 month mark to make sure we're on track and we're still focused on our priorities. That's something we do with our partners in marketing, which is fantastic. And then I'm huge into organization. I color code my calendar and meetings to align to different projects and work and teams to make sure that I am focusing on the right thing every week, and that I am giving my work the space it needs to work on individual projects. And that's a great thing with working in Microsoft. I get a report that tells me where I'm spending my time every week. So that's been really helpful with just making sure that I am focusing and keeping on track and keeping myself accountable.
Those are really good tips.
Yeah.
So I want to be cognizant of time. I know we got a couple other things we want to talk about. So I know you mentioned just there that you partner with marketing and some other people internally. So I know that those internal partnerships are really critical to being able to get your work done when you don't have anyone else in your team. How many times can I joke around about being a team? But it's like those internal partnerships are really important. So can you tell us a little bit about that and the teams that you work most closely with and how you're able to leverage those partnerships?
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe, my right hand people are my external marketing partners, as well as internal partners. They are my design team. They help with our strategy. They are our copywriters, market researchers. They help us to make sure we stay on brand. Definitely couldn't do
Mhm.
it without their partnership and their expertise, and what they bring to the table to really allow me to get large bodies of work done. I think that, again, our work is very hand in hand with looking at a consumer brand versus an employer brand, that there are a lot of resources and tools that we can use together. And so I think that their partnership is crucial for an employer brander's success.
So what does that relationship kind of look like? So you said they're in strategy and in execution. Like, do you lead the employer brand strategy and then delegate some of the execution to them? Is it more of a blend? Kind of what exactly does
Yeah.
that look like?
And I think this relationship with marketing has been really different and varied across the companies that I've worked
Interesting.
in the past. And I do think it's because there are a lot of times where your employer brander sits in talent acquisition, they sit in marketing, they are part of internal comms. So I do think it changes your relationship. For me personally, and now in my role here, I do sit in talent acquisition, but a really strong dotted line to marketing. I would almost look at it as, marketing owns our brand. They own our channels. They ultimately are the individuals running a lot of the projects that we focus on. And I would look at employer branding and talent acquisition being a stakeholder or even a customer of them. So we work extremely closely with agreeing upon the goals that we're focusing on, what are priorities, what are the hiring needs. They get a lot of feedback and advice or guidance from talent acquisition, but ultimately marketing, again, owns the brand and makes some final decisions on how we ultimately execute or how something looks. So I would say it's almost like a customer, type of relationship that we have. But it's definitely not always been, in that type of relationship. Sometimes marketing's been very much of a indirect partner or passive partner where we've said, hey, we're trying to update our careers website. Here are our edits, and can you please execute or update this by X date, and they'll execute. So it's really been different at every role or company that I've been a part of. And I think it's just establishing, what that relationship looks like, having really strong communication, and really understanding what employer branding is at your role to help you determine, what that relationship looks like and who owns what. Because ultimately, I think that will really help you get, again, work done fast if you're all on the same page and you are all striving towards the same goal.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. That's really good advice. Understanding what the relationship is and what you can expect from each other, especially because that relationship can vary so much between organizations.
Absolutely.
So your next kind of partner, what role does outsourcing and agencies play as a team of one? And where have you kind of seen, like, what do you think is like the maybe not the best, but like the most things to outsource, maybe that saves you the most time? Like kind of what have been your experience there?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when I've worked with outside agencies or had an agency partner, I think it's been first and foremost because you don't have the internal skill set within other stakeholders or partners that you have to get the work done. Maybe it's capacity. Maybe you're working on some high volume projects. You don't have the right technology, or maybe again, there's not the relationships there. Maybe your marketing team is a party one as well, and so that's really where you can kind of get the benefit of agency. Sometimes that comes with working with a more established brand or maybe a larger organization where they have that budget and can support that outside expertise. In my experience, agencies have been really helpful for media planning, ad campaigns, vendor management, content.
Sorry, you got turned off for a second. Sorry, continue. You said in your experience, agencies have been most effective. You said like ad campaigns, media.
Ad campaigns, vendor management, content creation, certain types of campaigns, like when you're doing search engine advertising. There's just some again, skill sets or volume of work that it just makes sense to be working with an outside agency and have the extra hands of maybe creatives or copywriters. So that's really when I would look at outside agency and where you could potentially have support from those agencies.
Do you find that it's, I guess it probably varies by organization, but in terms of like building that case for getting that, being able to outsource?
Yeah.
have an entire session just on how to get buy-in.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I would really it is a little bit of sometimes a little bit about building a case for it, whether you can demonstrate the business need to have that outside expertise, showing where there's a lack of skill or within your organization. Maybe it's about volume. Like sometimes it's a major project. Like if you're working on employer value proposition or like major content creation, and you just know the volume that you need to produce or the research that you need to do those, that's where you can build the case for that outside agency and support. And then again, I think that technology is a really big case for it too. You might want to do programmatic job advertising and not have the technology or the expertise.
Uh-oh, we have a little bit of lag here. So
Oh no.
sorry about that.
No
A
worries.
little bit of internet, always fun world here.
Yeah.
But okay, where were we there? So in terms of just like you mentioned, media planning and maybe like large EVP as like some areas that just if you just have a large volume of work or a short timeline or something like that, that could be a good area.
Yeah, it would definitely builds your case for using agency and showing the volume and level of in-depth work that would require outside agency.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're pretty much at time. We got one question, but before we get to the question, I just want to give you a chance. Any final thoughts, Jen, of just kind of things that you want to leave the audience with, like biggest lessons learned over the years, reflections, just kind of anything to leave us with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with each role that I've been in employer branding, I think the first and foremost important thing is to not skip the strategy and not to skip that reflection of what your current employer brand is. I think that will really help you focus on the right projects and determine the most impact you can make. And it takes time. You're eager to start, but it really will help you ultimately as a person of a team of one to really know what projects to do and where you'll make the most impact. um, I would say also really make sure you set up your relationships and get the buy-in that you need from maybe your internal partners. It's really critical to your success. It's understanding how you can partner together. Understand the brand guidelines and what you need to do as a trusted person managing a brand. Educate your partners on what you're trying to do and what employer branding is. I've definitely been part of organizations where employer branding's been completely new, and kind of educating them how it's different from a consumer brand or a company brand and why that's important can take time. But again, it can really help you get work done faster if you have that buy-in. I would say then lastly, like just think creatively, what tools, what resources, what people are part of your team or the recruiting team that can help you get your work done fast. I'm definitely for getting a little scrappy and creative and see what you've got to execute quickly and again, kind of make the most impact. So definitely think outside the box and trust in and talk to other employer branders to see what they've done to help them get work done quickly, because I know there's a lot of teams of one out there.
Yeah. No, definitely. And our industry is so great with sharing ideas and stuff. So I think definitely leaning on that network is huge.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we had one question for the question was, what are some trends that you are seeing going forward as it relates to engaging a younger audience, younger millennials and Gen Z, and ensuring that the messaging not only aligns with the business, but also this audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this time, and again, I think recruiters, employer branders will tell you that it's been a really unique few years in recruiting space. They not only, is there that new generation joining the workforce, but COVID really shifted how people think about the workplace and what's important to people. And I really do think it's blending both of those needs, understanding, what your newest audience is really focused on, whether that's remote work, being part of a company that is very established and is going to live through different shifts and changes in the economy. Is career growth a focus? And I think adjusting and adapting your messages to ensure that where your organization meets those needs is where you're focusing your efforts. And I think that's key, is making sure that you are authentically portraying what experience your company will be offering that audience, and making sure that you're marrying their needs to what you can offer. And also, I think channels, whether it's TikTok, and your company supports that, or it's Reddit, really just making sure that you are finding or meeting your audience where they are, so that you can get your messages across.
I think that's really great advice. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jen, and thanks everyone who joined live. This recording will be available on Stories Inc.'s LinkedIn Live Hub, but please join us next time. Thanks so much, Jen. This was fun.
Right. Thanks for having
Bye.
me. All right. Bye.